Hey guys, my name is Matimio, and today I'm excited to say that the night version of Siege of Shanghai has finally arrived on the CTE. Admittedly, the first time that I learned that DICE was going to be bringing us these different versions of the maps, I was excited because who doesn't love free content, but I didn't think that it was going to be that true night combat that I've always wanted in Battlefield. If you look back at basically every night map that DICE has created over the last couple of years, while it's darker in tone, it does sort of feel like that time of day. In reality, you don't have to play it any differently. Everything is nice, bright, and illuminated. You have no problem seeing the enemy. And that's exactly what I assumed that the night version of Siege of Shanghai was going to be all about. And while there are certain sections of the map that do fit that description perfectly, you run out in the open and there is moonlight, you are going to stick out like a sore thumb to the enemy team. But then there's also other sections where it is really dark and it fits that night combat that I have always wanted in Battlefield. And so the first thing that I'm loving about it is that you actually have the ability to manipulate the light sources into your favor. If you want to play like a silent little assassin, you want to stay in the shadows, you have the capabilities of shooting out different light sources. The first time I was walking down the street, noticed that there were some street lights on. My reaction was like, well, let's see if we can turn these things off. I shot at them, they blew out, and to my surprise, they actually made the street significantly darker. And so if you do want to have that silent assassin, you want to be that role where you are taking people out as they move from objective to objective, that is 100% possible, at least in certain sections on Siege of Shanghai. Another thing that I'm loving about it is that the flares are finally seeing some tactical and practical value. You guys know that this grenade is pretty much useless. Some may argue that on certain maps, like on Metro and Locker, if the enemy is putting down a lot of smoke and they're using the IRNV trick to pierce through that smoke and get some free kills, this can be one way to counter that. They'll be greeted with a nice bright beacon every single time that they aim down sight. But let's be honest, other than those two maps, it's pretty much just something fun to throw around. On Siege of Shanghai though, all of a sudden, not only does it look amazing with the awesome lighting effects, but if you use it correctly and you know that a couple of enemies are about to head in your direction, throw a few of these around, and if they are using the IRNV, not only is it going to blind them outright, but if you're in a nice dark little corner where they're going to have difficulty spotting you out, now they're around these really bright beacons, you've just turned the tides into your favor, and hopefully you're going to be able to use that advantage to take every single one of them out. I love that about it. One thing that did get a little frustrating though, and I know that DICE is aware of it, and they're going to be trying to address it in a future update, and that is that spotting is a little bit too powerful. We are playing on the classic rule set, and so there isn't any 3D spotting, which is good. If there was 3D spotting, it would just be flat out busted. But because the enemy can just use the information on their minimap, I mean, your icon is still going to show up there, there are a lot of times where I was trying to be stealthy, I was trying to use the shadows to my advantage, but little did I know I was spotted the entire time, and so as soon as I was getting that awesome flank off, the enemy knew my exact location and was able to take me out very, very quickly. I'm not exactly sure how DICE is going to be able to address the spotting issue. I thought that maybe they could just flat out remove it from that map. That could be one way of going about it, but then you eliminate the teamwork aspect there. If you see an enemy off in the distance, you spot him, why shouldn't your team have that slight advantage on that enemy? The other thing I thought of is, well, make it so that you have to spot while aiming down sight. If you're just running forward, then they won't have that capability. That could be another way that they could tackle it, but whatever the case, if they're able just to make it so that it's not as powerful as it is right now, it will be a great step in the right direction. And then my last criticism is that I still feel like they can go darker. Granted, this is much better than what we've gotten in the past. This is the best night combat map that we've ever gotten in the Battlefield franchise, but there were a lot of times, and I was noticing that in chat, many people were agreeing that they could go darker because there still wasn't enough incentive to use the infrared night vision scope or to use the flashlight and the flares, and while they can give you a slight advantage in some situations, most people were just running around with their normal loadouts because it was just performing just fine. The vision that I have and what I would love to see is players using the accessories and gadgets that they hardly ever use in normal Battlefield 4 because they don't have much of a function, they don't give you much of an advantage, but also just thinking about combat differently. If the IRNV and the FLIR became a common attachment on a night map, I would be okay with that. That's what they're designed for. That's exactly what they're meant for in real life combat. And if you don't want to use that accessory, that's fine. If you want to go with your standard red dot sight, you're also going to have to use that in tandem with the flashlight to be able to illuminate what's in front of you. That way, we're bringing in strengths and weaknesses into the equation, and depending on which loadout you decide on, you're gonna have to work around them. For example, if you decide to use the Iron V-Scope, every time that you aim down sight, you're gonna be able to have that crystal clear view of all of the action, but as soon as a light source comes into play, things become a little bit more challenging. If a flare is on the ground or you enter a building, it might be a good idea to switch on over to your pistol so that every time that you aim down sight, you're not completely blinded. On the flip side though, if you don't want to deal with that disadvantage and you want to go with something more like the flashlight and the red dot, you are still going to be able to illuminate your path every time that you aim down sight, but the disadvantage that you're then going to have to work around is that if the enemy is even looking in your general location, they're going to be able to see that flashlight bobbing up and down. You're going to be this great white beacon out in the distance, and they're going to be able to take you out no problem. It's that dynamic that I love because it really forces players to think about combat differently and adds in a different layer of strengths and weaknesses that we really never experience in normal Battlefield. But overall, I am really impressed by what they have created. The map looks gorgeous. Looking out in the skyline, it is breathtaking. It looks amazing in the Frostbite engine. And while there are a few things that they are going to be tweaking in a future update, you may notice that if you shoot out certain lights, it has no impact on if it gets darker in there. They know that. They are going to be addressing it in a future update. But overall, this map is phenomenal, and it is an awesome addition into the game. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think about the map. Do you think that they should go darker? Is it perfect the way it is? Let me know down below. But until tomorrow, guys, have a good one and take it easy.